The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed during this or any broadcast belong solely to our guests or our hosts. These broadcasts do not represent or reflect the views of their employers, sponsors, or affiliated organizations.
Welcome to the Flipboard EDU podcast with your host, William Jeffrey, where we collaborate, communicate, and educate with the greatest educators in the world on Flipboard. Let's start the show.
Welcome back, Flipboard fam. This is your favorite coach, Coach Jeffrey. And before remote learning was a thing, tailoring instruction to fit the needs of individual students was a daunting task for teachers. In a perfect world, teachers would do this automatically because in that world, every student has an understanding of what he or she doesn't know. However, in the real world, teachers personalize their lesson plan for each student by incorporating technology into their instruction. During COVID-19, new opportunities for schools arose to do this while relieving much of that stress off of the teachers' shoulders. Victoria Ransom is the CEO of Prisma and has developed a 21st century school that is on a mission to change the way students learn. Contrary to the narrative that all students struggle during remote learning and COVID-19, Prisma's success is proving the contrary to the narrative. In this episode, we speak to Victoria about Prisma and its role in education during COVID-19. She details why a school like her is an excellent option for learners in the 21st century and why student collaboration is key to its approach. So like we always do about this time, let's collaborate, communicate, and educate with the best educators in the world right here on Flipboard EDU Podcast. Welcome back, Flipboard fam. This is your favorite coach, Coach Jeffrey, and I have another amazing guest here tonight. I have Miss Victoria Ransom. Welcome to the show.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
Hey, so tell our listening audience a little bit about you.
Yeah, so I guess the first thing to say, because I have a funny accent, I'm from New Zealand, but I've lived in the US more than half my life now. And most of my career, I've been an entrepreneur. Previous to Prisma, I successfully sold a company to Google. And after that, my husband, who has been my co-founder for most of the startups I've been involved with, we said, whatever we do next, we want it to be something that can have a large and positive impact on the world. And then, quite frankly, we spun our wheels for a couple of years because all we saw were large problems in the world and we didn't know where to turn, what to solve. But along the way, we had 3 amazing children. And as our first child started to reach school age, kindergarten age, it really caused us to start to question how we wanted to educate her, and then our other kids too, which led us down the rabbit hole of looking at all different kinds of approaches to education, local innovative schools. I live in the Bay Area, and then we started looking around the world at innovative schools and at micro schools and homeschooling, and started to crystallize a vision for how we would like to educate our children that was very flexible, that honored sort of the speed of learning and the interests and the goals of the child, but could be flexible for the family too, and that would develop kids that could really go in all kinds of directions in their adult lives. Because I think one thing's for sure, the future is going to be very unpredictable, even more than normal, thanks to AI. We don't even know the jobs that are going to exist. So I think we need to really focus on kids with foundational skills. So anyway, as we started to get really excited about our own kids' education, we got excited about something even bigger than that, which is, could we create a model of education that many kids could access, and that if it was successful, that could really scale across large numbers of kids? Because one thing we noticed in all of our research, there are plenty of innovative schools out there, but they tend to be one little neighborhood school here, or maybe a small network of schools, but they're not reaching large numbers of kids. So we were inspired by the idea of a model of education that kids would love, that would really prepare them for their futures, and that could access large numbers of kids if it worked. And that was the inspiration for Prisma.
Excellent, excellent. So I was going to ask my next question, what is Prisma?
What is Prisma?
What is it?
Because I didn't say. Right. So it is a comprehensive educational solution for 4th through 8th graders. We're currently focused on 4th through 8th, for 4th through 8th graders who are learning from home. But we are not like a sort of typical online school, which I would characterize as having taken traditional bricks and mortar school and brought it online with grades and lectures and sort of textbook electronic format. They're kind of like textbooks. Prisma very much has a model of education that's very hands-on, very interactive, very much tied to the real world. So it always feels relevant, allows kids to really go at their own pace, very interdisciplinary. So it really pulls from some of the best of sort of innovative, progressive educational models. We are not like typical homeschooling because it's a very social experience. We put together cohorts of kids that meet together multiple times a day to do their workshops together, but also to do their daily stand-ups, which is very much based on community building and sharing with one another. We have very interactive clubs, very social. It's also Prisma learners are supported by a mentor coach who really guides them through their educational journey, really gets to know what they're capable of, what they're inspired by, just walks alongside them to bring out the best in each learner. Very different from traditional homeschooling where it's the parent that's playing that role. And of course, we're very different from traditional bricks and mortar because it's a very flexible model. Kids can have a lot of flexibility around their schedule. They could be learning from anywhere, really, wherever you are in the world, you could access a Prisma model. The vision is anywhere in the world. Today, we are more North America focused. So we've really created what we think is a new approach to education that's just it's very flexible to the needs and interests of the child, provides flexibility for the family, and really develops kids who have the flexibility to go wherever they want in their adult lives, because we really focus on those foundational skills like critical thinking and communication skills and collaboration and perseverance and adaptability and what we call designer's mindset. So yeah, that's Prisma. It's what we consider to be a new approach to education.
Excellent. So how is Prisma relevant to education in this COVID-19 era?
Yeah, online or virtual models of schooling or distance learning, whatever you want to call it, has gone from being something that a few families tried to something that the vast majority of families have tried recently. As I described before, our vision for Prisma very much predates COVID, but COVID gave us the kick in the butt to say, okay, enough dreaming and ideating and visioning and planning. Let's just do this. But I would say it's particularly relevant to this time because the vast majority of families that are at Prisma were families who were not homeschooling or doing online schooling prior to COVID. And during COVID, they discovered that model of education, home-based model of education, really worked for them, which I know has not been the narrative in the media. The media is certainly focused on what a disaster, parents hate it, kids hate it. And I'm sure that's quite true for many families and many kids. But where it's done, I think it's really worked for families. And we've attracted families to Prisma who, for a variety of reasons, found that the distance learning during COVID worked for them, perhaps because their learner was slowed down by school and they could really move faster when they were working at their own pace from home, or equally for kids that had particular learning gaps that were lost in school and felt like they were stupid, that really regained confidence through a different approach to learning, or kids that socially found school to be really tough. Families that discovered that the flexibility of distance learning really worked for them. We had this, thesis that COVID would really open up the minds to a lot of families of a new way to schooling. And I think the other thing that COVID did is gave families unique insight into their kids' schooling because they were hearing it every day and seeing it every day in a way that they never did, such that there is, a whole new set of families out there, I think, that are excited to try a new approach to schooling that's more online or more home-based.
So with Prisma being an online school approach, do students have to take standardized tests, or are you guys held to accountability ratings like a traditional K-12?
We're not doing the traditional testing schedule that a typical public school would do. The only assessment that we do, so we don't even have grades. We really believe in a iterative feedback model. If you look at a lot of the research around grades, I think we can all probably very intuitively understand that when kids get bad grades, they quickly lose confidence, they lose motivation. But even the kids that get straight A's, they're actually taught to learn for the sake of grades and to do just enough to get sort of an A grade versus being intrinsically motivated through the joy and satisfaction of learning and learning to really achieve their absolute best, not just what it takes to get an A, your absolute best. So our model, in fact, is based on constant iterative feedback. The idea being rather than waiting for a teacher to look at a project or assignment till the end, till it's done, our coaches are looking at key points all the way through when a kid is doing a project and giving feedback and saying, great job here. I think you can do better here. Go back and revise so that theoretically by the time the kids are done, they've really done their very best work, whatever their very best looks like. In terms of assessments, we do, before kids come into Prisma, we do a nationally recognized or nationally normed math and reading assessment. We have our own writing assessment. And that is so we have a really good understanding of where kids are at, because a very important part of our model is to meet you where you're at. We're not going to say you're this age, therefore you should be doing this grade level in math. No. If you're a fourth grader, but you're doing seventh grade level math, then we will meet you at that level. But if you're at fourth grade reading, then we'll meet you at that level. So we really believe in differentiating based on where kids are at and letting them go at their own pace. And so we do, that is the only thing we do that looks like testing. And kids have the option to do that in the middle of the year and at the end of the year as well. And most families find that's really valuable, but we are not driving our curriculum around the idea of testing, which I think is where testing starts to become really negative, where everything that the teacher has to do is about teaching to the test, which means it takes the creativity out of teaching. It means there's no time to pause and dive deep where kids are excited, or slow down where kids are confused. So no, we're not beholden to those sort of state tests.
I can only imagine what that must be like to be in an environment that's not driven by tests. I bet it's probably a joyous place to be.
It feels like it. Yeah, I mean, it is. And in fact, some of our coaches, I think they'd all say this. They'd all say that it's a dream job for them. And one of the things they comment on is just there's this foundation of optimism, like we can do this and anything's possible. And the other thing our coaches comment on is they will come up with ideas or suggestions or challenges, and we'll just do something about it. We'll try it. There's no sort of hierarchy of, sorry, we can't do this. And that's part of being a small organization. We have the benefit of being early and small so we can test stuff out and try it out.
Yes, that's great. And be able to pivot and turn where you need to and explore. That sounds like an amazing thing. What do parents say about Prisma when they see their students working with it?
Yeah, I think the first thing we keep hearing over and over again, which is really music to our ears, because we have two really big goals. I think one is that kids love learning. They really get excited about learning because learning is inherently amazing and exciting, and kids are born driven to learn. And the other is that we really holistically prepare kids for these exciting but very different future that they're going to lead. We hear a lot from parents this idea of, my child has never been happier at school. My child's never been so excited to wake up in the morning. I've never seen my kid voluntarily sit down in the evening. We do not assign homework, but kids will sit down and work on their projects because they're excited about it. I know one dad told me the other day that he said to his son, it was a Saturday, do you want to go out and kick a ball around? He's, no, I'm so excited about my project. I want to work on it. I never heard that before. So I think that excitement is maybe one of the first things we hear from parents. Another thing we hear a lot is just how important the Prisma coaches are, that mentor-coach relationship. Yeah. What a difference that's made in kids' lives in a whole lot of ways, whether it's a kid just being challenged and I guess gently pushed more than they had before to really achieve their best, or whether it's a kid. A couple of parents I've spoken to recently told me with tears in their eye, they always felt like there was some particular perhaps gap or something that their kid was not, a need that was not being met. And they raised it to teachers and raised it to the school. But because it was not this gaping hole, then they were always told, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. don't worry about it. Your kid's fine. And then at Prisma, where there was a coach that could really get to know that kid, had been able to identify your child is struggling with reading for this reason. And here's what we can do about it. So I think just that ability for kids to be seen. And it's something our coaches talk about too. Just that time that they have to get to know each kid is very tough in a more traditional classroom. And then I think parents have actually commented a lot on the positive community that is Prisma. I think it's something that people have a lot of questions about online learning. What's it like in terms of socialization? And including we at Prisma have just been super positively surprised by the friendships the kids have formed and the very strong sort of community bond and the positive nature of that. There's no sort of cliques that are forming or we haven't seen meanness. It's very much a supportive community, which I think is partly the nature of a virtual community where you can't, well, at least a moderated virtual community, which this is. There's coaches and there's none of that sort of like, it's lunchtime, which table are you going to sit at? The kids are all in it together. And that's just created a really inclusive environment, I'd say.
Wow. That's very eye-opening. I was just thinking about the question about, does Prisma offer a differentiated curriculum to students with special needs? But that right there, I think you've already answered my question, because for a diverse group to be engaged as it is, it would have to be differentiated for everybody's needs.
It is definitely. So it's differentiated both in terms of, as I said earlier, that we'll look at where a kid is at. And if they happen to be ahead in math and behind in writing, then we'll slot them in at the level that makes sense. So that is one way that we differentiate. But then on top of that, we provide a lot of opportunities, for example, for kids to express themselves through audio or through video, because some kids have a lot more to say in their heads with their voices than they can say in writing. That doesn't mean Prisma kids aren't practicing their writing. They're doing it a lot, but we give them other outlets for their voice or text to speech. We're certainly using right down to, because our coaches get to know the kids, then we do have a curriculum development team that is differentiating, but then the coaches can further differentiate materials based on exactly what they know the kids' particular needs are. And yeah, I think we are able to pretty finely grain, in a fine grain way, differentiate for a lot of different needs. That's not to say that we are the best place for every single kid. I think some schools would have specialist learning needs that perhaps we don't have, but thus far we've served a range of kids, right up to incredibly gifted kids, to kids that are really spiky, to kids that have dyslexia or kids that are on the spectrum. Found just some really wonderful results of kids regaining confidence and being really excited about their learning.
Excellent. That's very important. That's so very important. And Prisma sounds revolutionary in its approach to mission-driven learners. And while most educational institutions shy away from promises, looking at your website, what are the three things that you guys you guys promised? So I was like, oh, this.
Yeah, we do. We explicitly say we have 3 promises, actually. And so far, we're living up to them. So we're feeling pretty good about making those promises. And you've got to start with, what is our promise? What are we going to do for you? And if we don't live up to it, then parents should hold us accountable. The first one is this idea of kids loving learning and being excited about learning. I mean, you just said it. We feel like it starts with that. Like, how can you expect kids to really do their best and achieve their best if they're not really excited about what they're doing? And so to that end, we've just put a lot of thought into how we design, we call them our curriculum values. So things like giving kids choice, letting kids go at their own pace, meeting kids at the level that they're at, tying learning back to the real world. So ideally, kids are never saying, why the hell do I need this? When will I ever use this? Making learning as hands-on as we possibly can. We have this concept of hard fun at Prisma. Like, we should build a lot of fun into the projects or the workshops that the kids are doing, but it should be hard, because I think where kids get most excited is where it's fun, it feels relevant, but also they're challenged, because it feels good when you're challenged and you meet a challenge. A promise number 1 is that kids will really enjoy Prisma. And in fact, we do survey our kids a lot. And in our year-end survey, 100% of kids said they were happier at Prisma than they were in their previous school or homeschool. So we were excited about that. The second promise is that we will really prepare kids for the kind of world that they're going to live in. And I think our thesis there is that we really don't know what kind of jobs are going to be available when today's elementary school kids are adults. In fact, studies we've looked at say 65% of kids in elementary school today will work in jobs that we haven't even heard of yet. So how do you prepare kids for that kind of world? Well, our philosophy is absolutely they have to be learning foundational math. They have to be love reading. They have to be excellent writers. They need to understand the importance of science and think like a scientist, to appreciate history, but they also have to be just incredibly good at systems thinking and critical thinking. They have to be what we call have a designer's mindset, this ability to prototype and iterate and get feedback and rework something. They have to be ethical decision makers, be able to really take into account others' perspectives, be able to listen, formulate an argument using credible sources. We believe very strongly in kids having perseverance, being able to sort of power through in the face of challenges and having really strong follow through, which I think is something we're starting to see kids really lack when they get into the adult world. So that's another promise, is that we will prepare kids to really thrive in what is an uncertain future, exciting future, but a little unknowable. And then the final one, we really want to develop kids that are mission driven themselves, that really are driven to give back and contribute to our world in whatever large or small way it might be, very locally in their community, or perhaps they will have broader ambitions, but that they have this sense of, I will contribute to the world, because I think we need people who are doing that. We have some immediate challenges to solve at all kinds of levels, local, national, and global. And we feel really motivated by the idea of instilling that in our learners.
Excellent, man. That sounds amazing. I'm just thinking about, I wish I had Prisma when I was growing up. I probably would be a much better student.
We're hearing that from parents all the time. And some Prisma parents tell us they listen into the workshops because they're learning a lot and it's really interesting. The other thing we're hearing a lot, which I love, is families saying, we're having these amazing dinner table conversations where kids are taking what they're discussing at Prisma and they're bringing it to the family and they're continuing it. Whereas previously the parent would ask, how was school? And the kid would say, fine. And that was all they got. So that's really nice. That's a sign to us that we're really sparking kids' interest in what we're doing.
Yes, there's an old saying. I used to work with a group of people, and one of our mantras were, we worked in this curriculum department, that if our lessons made it to the dinner table, then we actually created a really good lesson. So
I love that. That's really neat. Yeah, then it becomes learning for the whole family, where their younger siblings, they get to learn along too. And there's nothing more motivating for a kid, I think, than when a parent is also really interested in what the kid is learning. And I think
that's excellent. Are you an educator, or your husband an educator by trade?
No, we're not, which I think is a strength and a weakness. I think clearly it's a weakness because there's a lot we don't know. And that's why we've had to surround ourselves with really experienced, qualified educators. And we've done that. I have my ideas about curriculum. I'm not developing curriculum.
Yes.
I love to see our coaches in action. I'm not a coach. The benefit of that is that I think we come at it from a different perspective. We sometimes don't know what's not possible. And so we really believe that part of the strength of Prisma is that it has a real diversity of perspectives or, backgrounds, in terms of we've got some really experienced educators, some really experienced teachers that have been, created their own charter schools, others that have worked in very alternative educational environments. But we also have software engineers, and we have product managers, and we have designers, and a lot of backgrounds that I think really creates sort of a richness of perspectives.
Excellent. So there are a lot of parents who can't really educate their children to the level that a traditional teacher would be able to. How could Prisma support those parents and their endeavors to just get their kids the right education that they may not be able to receive in a K-12 public school, 4 through 8, I should say?
Yeah, you mean in terms of they may not have a really high quality school.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. And that is when we started Prisma, we very much had in mind that part of what a virtual school can do is it means you're no longer limited to the schools that are just in your zip code. And sometimes zip code is such a strong determinant of whether you get access to a good school or not. And any kid anywhere, really anywhere in the world, but right now we're optimized for North American time zones. But any kid anywhere can join Prisma. One constraint, there is a cost involved. And so for some families, there's a financial hurdle to Prisma. Having said that, we have been very focused and are very focused on financial aid. 40% of Prisma families are receiving financial aid, varying from basically fully subsidized up to maybe partially subsidized. So we try really hard to support all families that come to us. And thus far, we've been able to support the vast majority. So for now, we're trying to meet or compensate for the fact that this is a private model by providing as much financial aid as we possibly can.
That's amazing. I would love to see that in the hood. I'm just going to be honest with you. There's some places that would really need Prisma. I went on your website and I looked through it and I was very impressed and I couldn't wait to get you on the show. So I just want to thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And it's a nice conversation.
Yeah. So where can our listeners find Prisma?
Yeah. So our website is joinprisma.com. Joinprisma.com. And there's a ton of information on there. It's a lot of reading. So you can get a lot of information. You can also sign up for a live info session. It's just small groups where we'll tell you more about Prisma. And on our website, access our social channels if you want to join any of our social media channels. But I'd suggest the website is a great place to start. And actually, kids that are really interested can come and experience a Prisma workshop. So after you've done an info session, we always invite families, their kids, to come and join and spend a day at Prisma. So that's always an option.
Okay. And before I let you go, do y'all have any plans for your coaches to do any professional development for K-12 teachers to give them some ideas on how to connect with children?
That's a great question. Not right now, because I feel like we are still refining our model and making sure that we've, ironed out all the kinks. And in terms of happiness of families and actually academic growth, we didn't talk about that. But with the testing or the assessment that we do, we've seen kids are growing much faster in math and reading than the national average, more than 150%. But still, we believe there's a lot to keep refining. When we've got there, I think that would be something really amazing that we could do to just share more about what we've learned. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's fun to see when you make learning really fun and exciting, which is really what we've prioritized. Turns out kids really learn a lot.
They really learn.
Yeah.
They really respond. Yeah, that's great.
Put in a lot of effort. So
yeah. Thank you, Victoria, for coming on. It was great having you, and I hope that you will come back and share some more with us about Prisma.
Sure. Would love to do that. Thanks for the opportunity.
Great. It's time for Flip Tips, and today's Flip Tip is brought to you by my homegirl, Terry Porter, and her blog on medium.com entitled Your Flipboard Magazine Cover is a Front Door. The cover of your Flipboard magazine is a way into your content. So just like someone selling a home wants a pretty front door to encourage people to come inside of their house and look around, you want a compelling Flipboard magazine cover that will have people flipping your content. The cover is a focal point of your magazine, and just like the first 5 minutes of a good lesson, an engaging Flipboard magazine cover is your hook. You can read more about Terry's article on her blog on medium.com and flip also into our Flipboard EDU podcast magazine. Thanks, Terry.
Flipboard is a great way to collect articles for classes, show off your school and school spirit, and share expertise with peers.
Are you a teacher who wants to start a podcast? The Podcast Planner for Teachers is your go-to resource for planning and brainstorming. It's packed with templates, worksheets, and checklists that will help you plan out your show from beginning to end. You don't need any experience or special equipment, just an idea and the drive to make it happen. With this planner, we want everyone who has ever wanted to start their own podcast but didn't know where to begin. We want every student in school today to learn about podcasts as they learn about other forms of media like TV shows and movies. And most importantly, we want teachers everywhere sharing their stories with students across the country through podcasts. Now is the perfect time for educators everywhere to get involved in this exciting new medium. Let us help guide you along the way. Click here now if you're ready to take control over your future by starting a podcast today.
Flipboard fam, thanks for sticking with me on this episode. I want to thank Victoria Ransom for talking with us about Prisma. I want to give a huge shout out to Aileen Laylor and Crystal Vanderboom for the editorials on the Flipboard Educators blog. You can read more about this episode and other educators on the Educators blog on Flipboard.com. Remember to subscribe to our Flipboard EDU magazine on Flipboard.com as well. Also, subscribe to the Flipboard podcast, The Art of Curation, found on all podcasting stations. Shout out to the homie Mia Q. Please subscribe and share our podcast with an educator or colleague. Our podcast is available globally and everywhere you listen to podcasts. So until next time, family,